Hey, y'all, come on in the Florida room. And tonight's going to be a great story. So get yourself something to drink, fire one of them fatties up, sit back, close your eyes, and relax. And let's get it. Tonight, I want you to imagine buying your dream home. It's big, 3 stories, and right on the water. There's a boathouse out back, plenty of room for the kids, and the kind of place that ordinarily would have cost more than you could have ever afforded. But hey, you got a deal. You got a really good deal. And there's a reason. You see, 6 people died inside that house. No, not 6 people over the course of 100 years. 6 members of one family. On the same night. In their beds. But y'all, that was more than a year ago. The man responsible, he's been convicted. He's behind bars. Whatever happened here is over. At least that's what you tell yourself. Then you move in. And according to the story you're about to hear, the house begins to change. Or maybe it's you that changes. You see, you wake up in the middle of the night. You look at the clock, 3:15 a.m. Another night, the same thing, 3:15 a.m. Y'all, you start feeling cold even when the house should be warm. You hear things you can't explain. Your family even begins behaving differently. And then come the stories that would eventually make this house famous. Strange smells, doors and windows behaving strangely. Even something with glowing red eyes outside. There's a little girl talking about her friend, Jody, and claims of something even more impossible happening inside the bedrooms. 28 days after moving into their dream home, the family leaves. And according to the story that eventually became famous around the world, y'all, they didn't just move, they fled. But tonight, we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to tell you the Amityville story the way millions of people first encountered it. We're going to go inside that house. And we're going through those 28 days of terror. We're going to hear what George and Kathy Lutz said happened to them. But you see, there's one rule. Whenever I tell you something that comes from the Lutz family's paranormal account, you got to remember this. It's just a claim. Because at the end of tonight's story, we're going to turn the lights back on. We're going to look at what can actually be documented. And we're going to ask one question. What really happened at 112 Ocean Avenue? Because there is absolutely a horror in that house. The question is whether it was the horror that you have heard about. Tonight's story will wrap you up into the strangeness. It's going to immerse you into the darkness. And I imagine it's going to chill your soul with a haunting mystery. Welcome to DJ's Southern Storytelling. Now, I need everyone to understand that before we get anywhere near ghosts, demons, or red eyes staring through the windows, we have to talk about something that is not disputed. 6 people were murdered at 112 Ocean Avenue, and it happened in Amityville, a community on Long Island, New York. The house belonged to the DeFeo family. Ronald DeFeo Sr., his wife Louise, and their kids. On November the 13th, 1974, Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr., he went into a local bar saying something terrible had happened at his family's home. Some people went back with him, and then the police were called. And inside the house, investigators discovered Ronald DeFeo Sr., Louise DeFeo, and 4 of their children, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John, all dead. All of them had been shot. 6 members of one family. But Ronald Jr., he was alive, and at first he blamed the killings on organized crime. That story didn't last. By the following day, DeFeo confessed. He would later change his account more than once, but ultimately, he was prosecuted for the murders. Now, at trial, his defense argued insanity. But no, the jury did not accept it. Ronald DeFeo Jr. was convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder and ultimately received 6 consecutive sentences of 25 years to life. Now, let me stop right there, because this is the part of Amityville that sometimes gets swallowed up by the ghost story. Those 6 people, they were real. The murders were real. Their deaths shouldn't become nothing more than scenery for a haunted house story. Now, whatever you believe about what happened later, remember their names, because that tragedy is established history. And approximately 1 year later, there was another family that walked through that front door. George and Kathy Lutz were looking for a home. They had 3 children in their household, and 112 Ocean Avenue, and it offered something very attractive. A lot of space, waterfront property, a large house, and a price that made it possible. But there was something they needed to know. They were told about the murders. Now imagine that conversation, y'all. There's something we need to disclose about this house. And then somebody tells you an entire family was murdered here. No, not decades ago. It was just last year. Now I ask you, would you still buy it? Well, George and Kathy did. On December the 18th, 1975, the Lutz family moved into 112 Ocean Avenue. And according to the story they later told, that's when things began happening. Now, from this point forward, pay attention to my wording. I will not say that this happened. What I will say is the Lutz claimed it happened. And there's a big difference. And before we're finished, you're going to understand why perfectly. One of the most famous pieces of the Amityville story concerns a priest who supposedly came to bless the house. Now, according to the story popularized in the book, while blessing an upstairs room, the priest encountered something very disturbing. A voice. And the message was supposedly simple: get out. That particular room would become an important part of the legend. But y'all, the family, they were just getting settled. You see, boxes, they still needed to be unpacked. Furniture needed to be arranged. Christmas was coming. This was supposed to be a beautiful, brand new beginning for the Lutz family. Then George supposedly started changing. You see, according to the Lutz account, he became obsessed with keeping the fireplace burning. He was always complaining about it being so damn cold in here. He spent increasing amounts of time around the fire. And then there was the clock. George claimed he began waking at approximately the same time every single night, around 3:15 in the morning. And why does that matter? Because the DeFeo murders were associated in later tellings with roughly that same early morning period. And suddenly, an ordinary clock became part of the Amityville legend. George opens his eyes, dark bedroom, quiet house, looks at the clock, 3:15. Next night, again, 3:15. Y'all, eventually, you wouldn't even need an alarm. You'd be waiting for it. Now, according to the Lutz family's account, the experiences escalated dramatically. They reported strange, cold areas in the house and unexplained, horrible odors. The doors and the windows, y'all, they began behaving in ways that nobody could explain. And then came one of the strangest elements of this entire story. Flies. Yes, flies. A room supposedly became filled with flies despite it being the middle of winter. Now I ask you, how many houseflies have you ever seen in the winter? Now think about the psychological effect of that. You already know 6 people were murdered here. You've been waking up at the same strange hour, and you feel very uncomfortable. You're not sleeping properly, and then something else happens, and then something else. How long before every little noise becomes significant? How long will it be before you stop saying, there's probably a good explanation? And maybe you start wondering, what if there isn't? But then the children enter the story, particularly one of them. The Lutz's young daughter reportedly began talking about a new friend, but an imaginary friend. Now, that alone isn't particularly unusual. Children have had imaginary friends for years. But this one supposedly had a name, and her name was Jody. And according to the Lutz account, Jody wasn't another little girl. Jody was described as something resembling a pig. Oh, the story grew even stranger. You see, George later claimed that one night he saw something outside. 2 red eyes. And they were looking back at him. And according to the account, when he went outside, he supposedly found tracks in the snow. Again, that is the family's claim. We're not calling it established fact, but imagine hearing this story in the 1970s. No internet, no YouTube, no Reddit thread tearing every photograph apart pixel by pixel. You're sitting at your kitchen table reading a book about a murdered family and the people who moved into that house. And now, y'all, there's supposedly something with red eyes looking through a window. Y'all, that's definitely the kind of image that will stick with you. Oh, in Amityville, hell, it was only getting started. The claims became increasingly supernatural. The Lutzes described frightening dreams, nightmares, vivid nightmares. George reportedly became increasingly troubled. Kathy reportedly experienced sensations of being touched. There were claims involving mysterious substances appearing in the house. And eventually came one of the images that would become synonymous with the Amityville legend: levitation. The story claimed Kathy was lifted from her bed. Now, other versions of the Amityville story included increasingly dramatic phenomena: green slime, black oil, blood coming out of the walls, shattering windows, a red-eyed pig looking at you, bodies supposedly levitating. Now, those claims became part of the mythology surrounding the house and were repeated in books, documentaries, and many films. And right here, really, is where I want you to notice something. You see, the story keeps escalating. We started with just a cold house. Then we started waking at night at 3:15. And then we started smelling horrible odors. And then the flies. An imaginary friend, Jody, that resembled a pig with red eyes. And now we're talking about physical supernatural attacks. Now, if you believe George and Kathy Lutz, something inside that house wanted them to get up and get the hell out of it now. And after only 28 days, well, it damn sure got its wish. January of 1976, the bicentennial year. The Lutz family had owned their new home, y'all, for less than 1 month. And according to their account, whatever was happening became just unbearable. And finally, they left. Or we probably should say they fled. 28 days, that's it. They had moved in on December 18th, 75. 28 days later, they were the hell gone. And I imagine they did not look back. And from that point forward, the story of 112 Ocean Avenue began transforming. You see, it no longer was simply the house where the DeFeo family had been murdered anymore. It became the Amityville Horror. Author Jay Anson turned the Lutz account into the 1977 book, The Amityville Horror. Y'all, that book became a bestseller. And then came the 1979 movie. Y'all, I'm going to tell you about my experience. 1979, I was 13 years old. That movie scared the living shit out of me. I mean, it really, really scared the shit out of me. Then the sequels began, the remakes, the documentaries, books, television programs, paranormal investigators, and decades of arguments. The house with those distinctive quarter-circle windows became one of the most recognizable homes in all of America. And if we ended the story right here, you would have one of America's greatest ghost stories. But y'all know better, because I promised you that before tonight was over, we were turning the lights back on. So let's go and do that. Everything changes when we separate this story into two piles. Now, on this side is what we know. 6 members of the DeFeo family were murdered at 112 Ocean Avenue. Ronald DeFeo Jr. was convicted of those murders. George and Kathy Lutz subsequently purchased the house and the Lutz family moved into it. Y'all, they stayed only 28 days. They said they experienced paranormal phenomena. And Jay Anson wrote a best-selling book based on that account. A massively successful entertainment franchise followed. Those basic facts are documented. Now, put everything else over here. What was claimed? The voices. The levitation. Jody. The red eyes. The slime. The black oil. The blood coming off the walls. The supernatural forces, the demonic explanation. Those are claims. And there is zero established evidence proving that supernatural forces caused those events. In fact, there's another version of the Amityville story, and it is considerably less paranormal. This is where Amityville gets very complicated. William Weber had represented Ronald DeFeo Jr. And Weber later made an extraordinary allegation about the Lutz story. You see, he claimed that he and George and Kathy Lutz had essentially developed the horror story together. According to an account summarized by History, Weber later said that the horror story had been created by the three of them over many bottles of wine. Wow. Now, that's a serious allegation. And if Weber was telling the truth, suddenly we're not investigating a haunting at all. We're investigating the creation of a giant fictional story. George Lutz, however, continued maintaining that what his family reported was real. Critics accused him of inventing the story for money, but he did not simply concede that the entire thing was fabricated. And that is important. I'm not going to turn Weber's accusation into proven fact either. And if we're going to be fair about evidence, we have to apply that standard to both sides. Weber made the allegation. The Lutzes maintained their experiences were genuine. What we don't have is independent proof demonstrating that ghosts, demons, or some other supernatural force terrorized the family. And there's something else worth considering. The house didn't disappear after the Lutzes left. You see, other people owned it, and other people lived there. Yet the extraordinary 28-day nightmare described by the Lutz family did not establish itself as some repeatable phenomenon affecting every subsequent occupant. So now we're left with a very different mystery. What demon lived at 112 Ocean Avenue? What exactly happened to the Lutz family during those 28 days? And those damn sure aren't the same question. Then there's the photograph. If you ever have gone down the Amityville rabbit hole, you've probably seen it. A photograph supposedly taken during a paranormal investigation of the house appears to show a small figure peering from a doorway. The image has often been called the Ghost Boy photograph. Now, some believers have suggested it resembles one of the murdered DeFeo children. And I'm going to admit something. Y'all, it's really creepy. If somebody showed you that picture at midnight without context, you'd probably look twice. But creepy ain't evidence, is it? A strange photograph doesn't establish that the figure is the ghost of a dead child. And that's one of the most important lessons in this entire story. Something cannot be explained without automatically becoming supernatural. I don't know what that is a perfectly acceptable answer. You don't have to fill the empty space with a ghost. And now we arrive at the part of the story that gets forgotten. Y'all, I need you to take away Jody. Take away the glowing eyes, take away all the slime, oil, the blood. Take away every movie, every demon, every paranormal investigator, every single book cover, and every Hollywood effect. And something horrifying still happened at 112 Ocean Avenue on November 13th, 1974. 6 members of the DeFeo family were killed. Their son and brother, Ronald DeFeo Jr., was convicted of murdering them. That's not folklore. That's not paranormal. That's not a campfire story. Those were human beings. Ronald DeFeo Sr., Louise, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John. They existed before anybody called their house haunted. And I think sometimes popular culture has gotten that shit backwards. People remember the windows. They remember the movie poster. And they remember the red eyes. They remember the flies. But they forget the family. Ronald DeFeo Jr. spent the remainder of his life incarcerated, and he died in prison in March of 2021. And the house? It's still there. The famous quarter circle windows were eventually changed, making the property less immediately recognizable to people driving past looking for the Amityville Horror House. Y'all, this is exactly why I wanted to tell Amityville this way. Because I could sit here and tell you there was a demon in that house. And it would make one hell of a story. But I can't prove that. I could also sit here and say every single thing George and Kathy Lutz said was a lie. Well, I can't prove that either. What I can tell you is where the evidence stops. 6 people were murdered. That's a fact. The Lutzes moved into the murder house. That's a fact. They left 28 days later. That's a fact. Y'all, they claim terrifying paranormal things happened while they were there. That's a claim. Their account became a best-selling book and eventually an enormously famous horror franchise. Like I said, that scared the living shit out of me. That's a fact. I promise you. And Ronald DeFeo's former attorney later alleged that the haunting story had been concocted over many bottles of wine. Must have been some hellacious wine, right? That's an allegation. That's how we handle a story like this. We don't have to ruin the mystery. We just have to know where the facts end and where the story begins. Now, Do I believe something happened during those 28 days? I believe George and Kathy Lutz told the world that something happened. Whether the explanation was paranormal, psychological, exaggerated, fabricated, some combination of those things like a supreme pizza or something else entirely. It is a question the available evidence cannot definitively settle. But there's one thing I don't have any trouble believing. DJ wouldn't have bought that house. No, no way in hell. You can keep the waterfront. You can keep the boathouse. You can knock $50,000 damn dollars off, throw the furniture in, and I'm still not going to sleep there. You feel me? Because if I wake up at 3:15 tomorrow morning, I want my biggest concern to be whether I need to use the bathroom or I'm thirsty. I don't want to look out the window and see two damn glowing red eyes looking back at me. Oh, hell no. And if a priest comes walking downstairs and tells me we need to leave, y'all, I'm not asking that man a bunch of questions. I'm grabbing my goddamn keys and I'm getting the hell out of there. Y'all, I'm DJ, and this has been DJ Southern Storytelling. Around here, hey, we can tell a creepy story. We can enjoy the mystery. But when real victims are involved, we're going to separate documented history from allegations and paranormal claims. Now, I want to hear from y'all. Was the Amityville Horror a genuine haunting? A story that grew bigger with every retelling? Or do you think the truth is somewhere in between? Oh, and one more question. Knowing what happened there in 74, could you have spent even one night at 112 Ocean Avenue? Because I already know my answer. Not a damn chance in hell, y'all. Peace. See you next time.